Hey, good evening, everybody. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here. It is about 10:40 p.m. Eastern Time as I'm putting this video together. We're going to talk about the potential here for Barry, potential tropical cyclone, soon to be Barry, whatever you want to call it. It's going to be Barry. The latest advisory is coming out from the National Hurricane Center as I speak, and I'm going to go over that with you and show you what's happening. As we wait for some more of the products to come out, first, let's take a quick look at the wide shot of the Atlantic Basin. Here is soon to be Barry in the Gulf of Mexico. This is the front that came off the U.S. recently, down into the south with, I don't know, maybe a little bit of a changeable air mass. It still seems rather humid to me. But it is a cold front, and this focusing mechanism, overall, the convergence and everything, part of what helped to spawn Barry. Barry itself, well, soon to be Barry, came from an area of energy, as I mentioned earlier, and you already know this, that worked its way out of the Midwest up here. Notice, too, out in the tropical Atlantic, this curious little area of energy. This is a tropical wave. There's another one there. Now look at this. This is why we call them tropical. Well, one of the reasons. They look like waves in the overall trade pattern. See that? It's true. And I mean, that's not the exact reason why they're called tropical waves. They're referred to as easterly waves, and they're low pressure pockets, energy. This one really trying to ramp up. And if it wasn't July 10th and it was August 10th, it probably would ramp up. The air out here is still fairly stable and dry. That Saharan air layer coming off Africa still. But this does have potential to develop over the next 36 hours or so. I'm surprised that the National Hurricane Center didn't mention it in their tropical weather outlook. It's not an admonition of them. I'm not admonishing them for that, but is that a word, admonition? But I'm just surprised, that's all. No big deal. It does show that the main development region out here in this system too, which, by the way, look, there's a little bit of convection with it right there, and that will all spread its way generally towards the Windward Islands here. So you folks in Trinidad, Tobago, maybe up to Barbados and southwest of there, be on the lookout, over the next couple of days as this tropical moisture comes in to your area. Not much chance of development at all, again owed to the fact that a fairly stable air mass still resides in the mid-levels of the atmosphere through here. There's just, it's like a blanket, it's just not going to allow for the upward motion to happen just yet. The upward motion right now is going to happen over here in the Gulf of Mexico with what will soon be Tropical Storm and then eventually probably Hurricane Barry. So this is the satellite animation of it, again, courtesy of tropicaltidbits.com. And you can see more convective activity, shower and thunderstorm activity has begun to blossom over the developing low-level circulation. Remember that the air is trying to come together at the surface and converge. It goes up, it's all rising, so it goes up and it's turning counterclockwise because of the Coriolis effect on the Earth. And they rotate counterclockwise. Cyclones do north of the equator, or the equator, whichever way you want to say it. And that convergence has to go up and then spread out. It can't all be blowing across in one direction like blowing out a candle. I should have had a candle. Hey, you could do an augmented reality candle, I guess. Probably not far away. But that's called outflow, when everything is coming out and fanning out clockwise in the upper levels. That's where you see this right here. That is your outflow. That is a very healthy sign for a developing tropical system. To be honest about it, that's a healthy sign. There is some northerly shear still impacting the system. It's got some organization still left to undergo before it becomes formidable, but it looks like the stage is set for that to happen. Look at that. That is some pretty impressive upper level anticyclonic outflow. So you have cyclonic turning at the surface here in the lower to mid levels, etc., as that air is coming in towards the lowering pressure, and then that impressive outflow, especially on the south and southwest side, southeast side, eastern side. A little choked off on the north. We'll see if that ever abates and allows this to really start to strengthen. So let's refresh the Hurricane Center page and see what they've got. 11 o'clock, well, 10 Central Time right there, 11 Eastern. System is almost a tropical depression. Storm surge, heavy rains, and hurricane conditions are possible across the north central Gulf Coast in a couple of days. So if we look at the public advisory, again, there's that headline there. Right now, the center of circulation, they show the pressure at 1,009. I think I saw where Recon was pegging 1,005, but that's okay. It's sometimes there'll be they all have to talk about it, and they look at the data, and this is what they came up with. But whatever. Okay, so it's 1,009 millibars. Winds are about 30 miles per hour. It's still in the formative stages. So here's a couple of interesting points. Let's look at the lat long. Very important. Remember your geography, okay? And me being a geographer, that's what my degree is in. This is what I specialize in, so hopefully I'll get this right in explaining it. So 27.7 north, of course, are the horizontal lines. That's the latitude lines on the map. And what is that? 88.0, those are the longitude lines, those are the vertical lines. So, if we see the latitude number, which is 27.7 now, on tomorrow morning's advisory getting smaller, let's just say that it's at 26.2, and the longitude gets larger, 89.3, or something like that. As the latitude gets smaller in this case, and the longitude gets larger, that means that it's losing latitude. It'll be moving west-southwest or southwest. The bottom line is the more latitude it loses now, the more time over water it will have later. You with me on that? So that's very, very important to monitor how that evolves over the next couple of days, really. So let's really watch the lat long on this going forward. So let's read what they say. Summary of watches and warnings in effect. Hurricane watch still for the mouth of the Mississippi River to Cameron, Louisiana. Storm surge watch still, hurricane watch. So no warnings just yet. The disturbance was centered 27.788, etc. And there you go. It's moving west-southwest near 9. And a motion toward the west is expected on Thursday. So that's important. A motion toward the west is expected on Thursday, followed by a west-northwest motion on Friday, and northwestward by early Saturday. So the longer it takes for that to happen, and again, the more latitude it loses, the more chance it's going to have to become stronger pressure-wise, a measure of intensity, and, of course, wind-wise. Very important. So we'll be tracking that. Hazards affecting land. So now this has gone from 3 to 5, now it's up to 3 to 6 feet, so that is a life-threatening storm surge. Storm surge, mouth of the Pearl River to intracoastal city in Louisiana, 3 to 6 feet. So that's taller than me, that's 6 feet. And that is above ground level. And see, that's what it says. The water could reach the following heights above ground somewhere in the indicated areas if the peak surge occurs at high tide. There's a lot of ifs in there. But the modeling right now indicating 3 to 6 feet, and I expect that this will go higher. All right, very important. Rainfall, 10 to 15 inches. This has gone up as well. Isolated amounts of 20 inches. That's terrible. That's terrible, terrible, terrible. Rainfall amounts exceeding 69 inches have already occurred across portions of New Orleans today, which has already, it's resulted in flooding already. And, of course, your wind, hurricane conditions are possible by Friday night, with tropical storm conditions possible by early Friday. All right, so I've never met, I don't know if you say that, Kangialosi. I don't think I have. Maybe, I don't know. I was down there in December talking about Hurricane Michael. I can't remember if I met him or not. And it doesn't matter. I know some of these guys personally. I don't think I've ever met him. Let's see if the discussion is out. And it is hot diggity. All right, so this is really important. First of all, a quick tutorial. The cyclone discussion is where you get inside the head of Mr. Cangialosi, however you say his name. Whoever the forecaster is, this is what they are thinking. This is not written by an automated computer or whatever. This is written by the forecaster that is responsible for the advisory. And so we get inside their thought process and some of the technical aspects of what's going on. All right, so let me read it to you, and then we will dissect it and try to pick apart some things that are interesting and hopefully helpful. The system is becoming better organized, and it is almost a tropical depression. Satellite images show a persistent area of deep convection near the estimated center with loosely organized bands, and we saw that on the satellite imagery, so that makes sense. Surrounding that feature. Earlier, the NOAA hurricane hunters found that the pressure has dropped a little to 1,009 millibars, although the center is not yet well defined. The estimated initial intensity is still 25 knots based on surface observations and the NOAA dropsonde data. The broad low is moving west-southwestward at about 8 knots. The track models are in general agreement that a mid-level ridge centered over the Rockies should cause the system to move slowly westward on Thursday and west-northwestward on Friday. After that time, however, the models diverge considerably, with some solutions showing an abrupt northward turn towards a weakness in the ridge, and others a more gradual one. The latest GFS run has shifted to the west of its previous track, closer to the previous NHC forecast, while the HWRF, that is Hurricane Weather Research Forecast model, has shifted to the right, or more to the east. Based on the overall guidance spread, this track forecast is nudged to the east of the previous to be closer to the various consensus models. And these consensus models, again, it's kind of like polling a whole bunch of people and you get a consensus about something. And to put it in very easy to understand terms, there's, let's just pretend, 42 people in a room at a conference. And the conference head, in this case the forecaster, the director of the conference says, all right, we're going to go to lunch. We're all going to take a bus. Where do you want to go? Here are your choices. And he gives you 5 choices. You know, Chick-fil-A, Pizza Hut, Olive Garden, Outback, or Longhorn. And let's say that most of the people there, the consensus is they want to go to Chick-fil-A for lunch. All right? I'm just saying. I don't eat that much of any of those places anymore myself, but that's a story for another day. The consensus is a consensus. You know what I mean? It's like it's not an average, but that's the best way to describe it. All right? So there will still be people that are, oh man, I wanted to go to Olive Garden. Maybe 2 or 3 people wanted that. But the consensus of the group is, they want to go to Chick-fil-A for lunch. Does that make sense? So in the modeling here, very much more complex than that food analogy. In the modeling, the consensus generally is what the Hurricane Center is going to look at, and then the forecaster can adjust based on that consensus, east or west, north or south, whatever the case may be, as needed. So overall, and that's my point here, that the forecast is nudged just to the east of the previous one, closer to the overall consensus. So that's kind of like saying, all right, you know, for the people that really wanted to go to Olive Garden, you talk to them about some pros and cons and just this, that, and the other. Maybe the Olive Garden, you sit down, it could take an hour or whatever. It's more of a waiting restaurant. You get waited on. Chick-fil-A, you can order, get in and out. Oh, okay. Well, you get a few more people that come over to the Chick-fil-A side. That's how it works. So there you have it. It makes sense, and that's what a consensus is. All right, so since the system is still in the formative stage, only slow strengthening is likely during the next 12 hours or so. However, after that time, more significant strengthening is likely due to very warm sea surface temperatures across the northern Gulf of Mexico, a fairly moist atmosphere, and a favorable upper-level pattern over the system. It's largely an update of the previous one, shows the system becoming a tropical storm Thursday and a hurricane by late Friday, so forth and so on. So, you know, the forecast is fairly close to the IVCN That's another consensus intensity model. Some of these are newer, and I don't understand them exactly. Levi Cowan could tell you. And that's the beauty of this, is I don't know everything, but nevertheless, they are fairly close to these other models right here. All right, so intensity, I'm telling you, overall, the intensity of this is going to be really interesting because it's not a very large system like Katrina was. It was pretty large. Rita or Ike. Even Michael was a little bit larger in aerial coverage than this system. And being that it is small, once it develops that tighter inner core, assuming it does so, it could really, really ramp up quickly. So we'll see. That being said, there's not really much in the way of mitigating factors right now. Not a lot of dry air. There's no big front coming down like you would see in the fall. It's going to kick a bunch of shear out of the southwest over it. So if anything, my gut tells me, after doing this for 25 years, with all these ideal conditions in place, if anything's going to happen in the intensity side of things in a rapid sense, it's going to be that it really ramps up. So I can deduce that this either really never takes off at all, not so much that it would weaken, in other words, you're not going to have it ramp up and then suddenly ramp down for some strange reason like we saw with Lily in 2002. Katrina weakened from a strong Cat 5 to a Cat 3 at landfall wind-wise. Surge was a different story. My point is, if anything's going to happen rapidly, my gut is it'll be intensification, not weakening until, of course, landfall. I don't think it's going to ramp up and then all of a sudden ramp back down. It's either going to not do it at all or ramp up really high, whatever, Category 2 maybe. Wouldn't surprise me. After Michael, we can't take anything for granted and say, oh, well, this forecast is a piece of cake. Honestly, that one, I knew that all the way back to the beginning of my career, but until you see it in person, you think about Andrew. Andrew was more stable along the way with its intensification. Michael was very quick, and I will never forget that. So there you go. Speaking of Michael, it's on Amazon Prime, by the way, the documentary which covers Florence and Michael. A couple people emailed me today and asked me about that. They haven't tuned in a while, which is understandable. The tropics have been quiet. And they're like, hey, did you ever do that documentary, and where can I find it? And no, I didn't do a DVD, but those are expensive. It's on Amazon Prime Video. Just search Tracking the Hurricanes 2018. I'll put the description in the YouTube video. But yeah, Michael taught me a lot, and I'll remember that for a long time. Okay, that's it from me for now. I appreciate you tuning in. I will be streaming again tomorrow from the vehicle as I drive down to Covington, Louisiana next. That's our base camp, where I'll be meeting up with colleagues Carrie and Derek's friend who's coming down from South Dakota, and we'll figure out a game plan and go from there. It's all dependent on what future Barry, I don't want to say decides because it's not a living thing, but you get the idea. It's all dependent on Barry, and hopefully it'll be called Barry in the morning so we don't have to keep calling it Private First Class Barry. I'm just kidding around. PTC Barry. I know that's not what it means, but anyhow. All right, I'm going to step away from this for a little bit, watch a show on Netflix or something, and try to relax, get up in the morning, start driving to Louisiana. You guys have a great rest of your evening. Thanks as always for tuning in from your side of the screen. I really appreciate it. Also, a quick welcome to all of our new patrons today on Patreon. Thank you. You're in for an amazing experience. Hi, I'm Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. I'll talk to you again tomorrow morning.